In the shadow of scandal and the gleam of the Tudor court, there was another Boleyn girl, less remembered, but no less entangled in the drama that reshaped a kingdom. Her name was Mary Boleyn. The actual birth of Mary Boleyn is uncertain, as is whether she was older or younger than her famous sister Anne. What is known is that both she and her siblings, Anne and George, were all born between 1500 and 1507 at Blickling Hall in Norfolk. Their father, Thomas Boleyn, was a rising diplomat in King Henry's court, and their mother, Elizabeth Howard, a daughter of the powerful Howard family. Alongside her more famous sister Anne, Mary grew up at Hever Castle in Kent. There, the Boleyn children received a refined education suited to their status, one that prepared them for life at court. Music, languages, embroidery, and all the graces expected of noble women. But no education could prepare Mary for the life that lay ahead. A young Mary, along with her sister Anne, was sent to the glittering court of France, where she served as maid of honor to Princess Mary Tudor. Mary Tudor, the younger sister of King Henry VIII of England, was sent to France to marry King Louis XII of France. The marriage was part of a peace treaty between England and France. By marrying Mary to the aging King Louis XII, Henry VIII hoped to solidify an alliance and stabilize relations between the two countries. King Louis XII, who was 52 and in poor health, wanted a young, beautiful English bride to strengthen his position and produce an heir. Mary was 18 at the time and was known for her beauty. However, Louis died just 3 months after the marriage. Mary then quickly and secretly married Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk, and returned to England. Mary Boleyn and her sister Anne remained in France. Mary's reputation at the court of the new King Francis became somewhat scandalous, and there were rumors that she was a young woman of easy virtue. She is said to have caught the attention of King Francis and became his mistress. Years later, he would refer to her rather disparagingly as my English mare, and a great whore, the most infamous of them all. Whether this was the bitter judgment of a scandalized monarch or the truth of a young woman caught in courtly intrigue, history has not settled the matter. There is no evidence that Mary ever had an affair with the King of France. Perhaps he made his comments in an effort to sully the Boleyn name when Anne's relationship with King Henry became public knowledge. After spending 5 formative years in the glittering courts of France, Mary Boleyn returned to England in 1519. The timing was no coincidence. Her father, the ever-ambitious Thomas Boleyn, had likely orchestrated her return to arrange a suitable and strategic marriage. Her groom, William Carey, was a man of good birth, well connected to the royal household and rising swiftly through the ranks, with Henry VIII himself appointing him Esquire of the Body and Gentleman of the Privy Chamber. William's prospects were promising. For a brief time, Mary appeared to settle into the life expected of a nobleman's wife. But court life, with its shifting alliances and dangerous allure, had other plans for her. In 1522, during the height of her husband's advancement, Mary caught the eye of the king. The details of how they met and how she became his mistress remain shrouded in secrecy and speculation, but many believe it was in 1522 that she became King Henry's mistress, though some sources suggest the affair may have begun as early as her return to England in 1519. The romance, discreet but whispered about, likely spanned a few years, though the exact timeline is elusive. What survives, however, are lingering questions and controversy. Mary gave birth to two children, Catherine in 1524 and Henry in 1526, both while her affair with the king may still have been active. Were they William Carey's children or the king's? The debate has never been definitively settled. Henry VIII never publicly acknowledged either child, unlike his known illegitimate son, Henry Fitzroy. And yet, the timing, the royal favour, later shown to Mary's children, and the silence surrounding their paternity have led many historians to suspect a hidden truth. What is clear is that Mary's time as the king's mistress had likely ended by 1526. By then, Henry's attentions had turned elsewhere, to her younger sister, Anne Boleyn, whose ambition and refusal to be simply another royal mistress would soon reshape the very course of English history. As Mary's influence waned, her younger sister Anne's star began to rise. When William Carey died of the sweating sickness in 1528, Anne assumed guardianship of Mary's son, securing him a place in a prestigious monastery and arranging a pension for her widowed sister. The sisters, however, were not close. Anne's ambition increasingly distanced her from Mary's quieter existence. In 1532, Mary accompanied Anne and the king to Calais, a sign of her remaining close proximity to the court. Months later, Anne was crowned queen, and Mary again found herself at the periphery of royal power. In 1534, Mary Boleyn secretly married William Stafford, the younger son of a landowning family from Essex. As a soldier with limited prospects and a modest income, Stafford was far from an advantageous match. Many believed the marriage was made for love. When Mary became pregnant, the union was revealed, sparking outrage. Queen Anne and King Henry were incensed, and the Boleyn family disowned Mary. This possibly resulted because now that she was the Queen's sister, she could have been used in a political marriage also. As a member of the royal family, she was not allowed to marry without the monarch's consent, especially to someone of lower rank. Mary and her husband were quickly banished from court. Reduced to near poverty, Mary wrote to Thomas Cromwell, King Henry's chief advisor, pleading for help. She admitted she might have married a man of higher rank, but insisted she could never have found one more honest or loving. "I had rather beg my bread with him," she wrote, "than be the greatest queen in Christendom, and I believe he would not forsake me to be a king." Her appeals stirred little sympathy. Henry remained unmoved, and Cromwell's attempts to sway her father, uncle, and brother led nowhere. Eventually, Anne softened slightly, sending Mary an ornate gold cup and a sum of money, but she still refused to restore her sister to court. This gesture marked the closest approach to reconciliation between them. Mary was cast out of court, disowned by her family, and left to live in quiet exile. It is this exile that may have saved her life. What followed were 7 years of silence. Following her banishment, Mary Boleyn vanished from the stage and the pages of history. There is no record of her ever seeing her family again. As her siblings were drawn deeper and deeper into a fatal courtly web, Mary seems to have lived a quiet life away from all the intrigue. As is so famously recorded, King Henry became disenchanted with Anne Boleyn. In a desperate move to free himself from Anne Boleyn, his second queen and once great obsession, Henry began to search for any legal or spiritual loophole that might dissolve their union. Among the more scandalous justifications considered was the king's past affair with Anne's sister, Mary Boleyn. According to the Dispensation Act, such a prior relationship could render his marriage to Anne null and void, as it was considered an impediment under church law. The idea rested on the principle that by having been intimate with Mary, Henry had created a bond that made marrying her sister tantamount to incest in the eyes of the Church. Thus, Mary's affair with Henry, long buried or deliberately ignored, was now resurrected as a potential weapon. What had once been a discreet liaison was suddenly recast as a moral and legal obstacle, giving Henry yet another thread to pull in his increasingly desperate bid to cast Anne aside. When Anne and their brother George were imprisoned and executed in 1536, Mary made no recorded visit to the Tower. She did not attend their trials, nor did she appear at their graves. Her absence remains a mystery, but it can well be imagined how she must have felt when she received the news of their deaths. Mary outlived both her parents. Her mother died in 1538, and her father 1 year later in 1539. Following the death of his wife Elizabeth, Thomas Boleyn, weary and nearing the end of his life, began at last to reconcile with the only child he had left, Mary. The rift between them, deepened by scandal and disobedience, had long kept them apart. But time, grief, and the approach of death have a way of softening even the most rigid pride. A surviving draft indenture shows that before his death, Thomas had entered into negotiations with Thomas Cromwell and the king himself. He entrusted the matter to his loyal younger brother, James, and his legal counsel to ensure that Mary would be financially protected. Despite their estrangement, Thomas had not forgotten his daughter or her future well-being. Mary would outlive her parents by only 4 years. In 1543, Mary passed away, most likely at Rochford Hall. Her final resting place, unlike those of her more infamous siblings, remains lost to history, her grave veiled by time. In death, as in life, Mary Boleyn remains just beyond our grasp, a shadow at the edge of Tudor memory. But her legacy would stretch further. Her children, Henry and Catherine Carey, would rise quietly but surely, finding favor at the glittering court of their cousin, Queen Elizabeth I. Yet Mary would not live to see the triumphs of her children or the ascendancy of the niece who would rule England.